So Theresa, owners and punters often see these different kinds of bits in the steward's reports and gear changes. What are the two main kind of bits that you use on your horses?
Okay, so the main bit that we essentially use on our race horses is called a lugging bit or a ring bit. So this is what our ring bit looks like. Essentially it's just a snaffle bit with a ring on it, and the ring helps to stop the bit going through the horse's mouth. So this is essentially what we train most of our horses in, and most horses race in them. You see a few different variations. There's a few with bigger rings on the sides and that. They essentially do the same thing, and that just comes down to preference of trainers. But yeah, that's essentially the main bit that we use on most of our horses on a day-to-day basis.
So just looking at the various components of this ring bit, can you just run us through what each piece of it is designed to do?
Okay, so the actual bit itself, that's just a plain snaffle bit.
That's a snaffle because it's in two separate parts, right?
So that's just, and it's got the curve and curves around to fit the horse's mouth. It's got a joint in the middle to allow it to move around a little bit.
Yes.
And then we've got the ring, which this is essentially the lugging big part of the bit. They're connected by a little ring here, and that's just to stop this ring moving away from the bit. If that comes off, you can get horses get their tongues stuck in between the two bits.
Okay.
So that's just to stop that moving around too much. Essentially the ring, it sort of moves back and helps your riders control your horse, and also stops the snaffle bit from pulling through a horse's mouth.
From one side to the other.
That's right, especially racehorses if they want to get on one rein, and that sometimes the bit can actually slide right through its mouth, so this ring actually stops that from happening.
Yeah. And this is also what's known as a lugging bit. It's the same thing basically?
Yes, just different terminology, but yeah, some people call it a ring bit, some people call it a lugging bit, but this is essentially what most race horses race in.
So the other main kind of bit, and the thing that you often see as a gear change, is the use of a Norton bit. So here is a Norton bit. Can you just run us through the parts of that and what they're designed to do?
Okay, so your Norton bit is a more severe bit, and usually it's more likely to be put on horses that want to go quite hard in themselves, or quite hard in the mouth. Just gives the riders a little bit more control and makes the horse easier to steer and to come back underneath the rider and not go quite so hard in themselves. I'm a fan of the Norton bit on the right horses. We use it on a couple of horses' track work. It just makes the rider's job far easier, and also gets your horse doing their work properly, so that your riders can hold them back early in the work without them pulling too hard in themselves. Just gives them that little bit more control. It's probably a bit you don't put beginner riders and that in. You want riders with good hands using them.
So basically with the Norton bit here, we've got two pieces to it, two actual bits. Is that how it works? And the top one is connected to this leather strap, which essentially goes over the top of the horse's nose. Is that?
Yeah, so it just gives your riders a little bit more control. I use it on quite a few horses and with good success, and yeah, it just makes them a lot more tractable. But yeah, quite often when you see a horse with a Norton bit on, it means that they can be a little bit hard going. I also find that it helps riders being able to steer horses a little bit better, horses that want to really get on one rein and hang, and that this can also help with a little bit as well. But I've had great success with it, even recently. A horse like Steve, that's quite awkward in that with his head carriage and wanted to go a little bit keen. He's been working in that and racing in it and actually starting to relax quite nicely. So it's just trial and error, using different bits on different horses to see what works with them, and also having the right riders on them to use these bits appropriately. I also find you get some horses that like to play with their tongues a little bit and get their tongues over bits, and because this bit's held up and this piece goes over the nose, it actually holds the bits up a little bit higher in the mouth. So I find that you don't tend to get horses getting their tongues over these bits. And whilst you can put a tongue tie on horses, there's some horses that don't really like having a tongue tie on and resent them. So this is another option for those sort of horses as well.
Right.
You also have tongue control bits that have a piece of steel that sits in the centre. But again, some horses aren't all that comfortable in them. So yeah, I also find these quite handy for those horses that like to play with their tongues and can quite possibly get them over the bit. So yeah, this sort of stops them doing that as well.
Right. And so, from the point of view of a punter or an owner, when we see a gear change to a Norton bit, is that likely to improve a horse's performances in a race? Is it
Oh, it
something
definitely
we should?
can. For a hard-going horse that wants to sort of get its work over and done with sooner rather than later, this can really help them settle in a race.
Yeah.
But obviously in a race you want to be conserving your energy early and have something left in the tank to finish off with. So if a horse has one of these bits on and is relaxing and more controllable earlier in a race, then theory is they're going to be able to finish their race off stronger.
Thanks, Theresa.